Welcome to the very first episode of 64 Commodore. My name is Mike, and I am so excited to take you through this journey into the world of Commodore computers. From their humble beginnings in 1977 through their legendary status in the world of personal computing, Commodore computers have had a massive effect on so many people's lives, including my own. In this series, we're going to explore and restore the incredible history of Commodore computers, and along the way, we'll tell some of their stories as we bring them back to life. These incredible machines didn't just shape personal computing, but they were the launch pad for so much that was to come afterwards. The repairs in this series are going to focus more on the puzzle-solving aspect of the repairs rather than diving into technical details like how to solder. While we restore the machines, we'll explore the effects they had on the lives of the people who used them, and sometimes on the people who made them. Now, don't worry, longer repair videos will still be coming to this channel, including some longer looks at some of the machines included in this series. But every once in a while, there'll be an exception where we'll take a deep dive into a Restoration Extreme, tackling the machines in the worst condition. Now, some machines like this Amiga 2000 that looked like it had mice living in it for decades may be beyond my ability to restore, but I am going to give it my absolute best shot. Some other restoration extremes will include things like this Commodore 128 that had ants nesting in it, and I had no idea how much damage ants could do to a computer. I've also got an Amiga 1000 that was stored in the same place as this 128, and it looks just as bad, if not worse. I'm not sure because I haven't opened it yet. Towards the end of most episodes, we'll also have a restoration report, where we'll take a look at the machines that were restored during this episode and tally that for the episode and for the entire series. My goal when this series is over is to have restored at least 64 Commodores and hopefully a lot more. So today we're going to start off this series with a pilot episode where I'll introduce you to all the machines, and I've kind of arbitrarily grouped them into 5 categories. First, we have the early birds, like the PET and the VIC-20. Next, we have the Commodore 64, which belongs in a category all by itself. Next, we have the TED series, like the Commodore 16 and the Plus 4. After that, we have the Commodore 128s, which Commodore grouped in with the Commodore 64 in its reports, but I believe it needs a category all of its own. And last, but far from least, we have the Amigas, which are near and dear to my heart. So, let's take a look at the machines that you're going to see in future episodes. They're all laid out here for you to see, but to start out, let's look at the machines that started it all, the early birds.
Why buy just a video game from Atari or Intellivision? Invest in the wonder computer of the 1980s for under $300, the Commodore VIC-20. Unlike games, it has a real computer keyboard. With the Commodore VIC-20, the whole family can learn computing at home. Plays great games, too. Under $300, the wonder computer of the 1980s, the Commodore VIC-20.
Before the Commodore 64 became the icon that we all know and love, there were some real trailblazers that paved the path for things to come. So let's start out by looking at the PETs, the CBM2 series, and the VIC-20s. The PET was part of Commodore's first line of personal computers released in 1977. The Trinity of 1977 included the Apple II, the TRS-80, and the Commodore PETs. These 3 legendary machines kicked off the personal computer revolution. The Apple II wowed people with its color graphics, the TRS-80 became a go-to for hobbyists and small businesses, while the first was the PET, which was, and still is, a cool all-in-one machine that looked straight out of sci-fi. In fact, it went straight into sci-fi. Together, these 3 pivotal machines brought computers out of labs and universities and right into everyday life. This PET 4032 from 1982 was in awful shape when it came my way, and it still needs some attention to get it fully operational. It's a wonderful example of a classic machine that came from an educational environment. Next is this B12880 from the ill-fated Commodore CBM2 series. These machines were powerful for their time, but they failed to gain a foothold in the marketplace. This particular unit may present some unique challenges, including an early switching power supply and difficult to source parts. It'll get its own episode where we'll find out what its condition is and see if it can be saved. These machines have a really cool look to them and are often referred to as the Porsche pets. And then we have the VIC-20s, 10 of them. These affordable and colorful machines introduced many people to personal computing. Some of these are in better condition than others, but all will eventually get brought back from the past.
There's a new personal computer from Commodore, with a third more built-in memory than the Apple II, at half the cost. The Commodore 64.
Moving on from the futuristic promise of the pets in the VIC-20, we come to the legendary Commodore 64, where we'll trace its evolution one circuit board at a time while we explore the legacy that is still unfolding to this day. The bread bin 64s are iconic, and we have about 16 of them here, including one that's been put in a replacement case. Some may just need a bit of cleaning, but others have major issues. So I have plenty more on the sidelines, so we'll probably see more than these in future episodes, but this seems like a good place to start. The Commodore 64Cs took the bread bin's timeless tech and put it in a more modern package. These 6 units may need some love, but I plan to bring them all back to life. And then there's the Commodore SX64 Executives. These were the very first color portable computer ever sold. These slick machines were revolutionary for their time, but these two have seen better days. One of these machines was actually owned by an old friend of mine, Chuck Keach. When I was in the Commodore User Group, we worked together on a lot of things. And when I found his machine, which was engraved with his name in the Stone collection, I was shocked. And I really want to get this machine back in perfect condition. I've been looking for Chuck online for about 10 years, so I'm hoping I can find him and maybe someday I can get this machine back to him. In the meantime, it's mine. Of course, I have my own Commodore 64 story. Started back in 1983 when I got one as my very first computer, and continued in 1984 when I started making a game in assembly language that I now call Dark Dominion of Maldekar. Revisiting the project over the last year has been an incredible journey where I've rediscovered the feelings of wonder and excitement that I felt back in the day. Diving deep into the Commodore 64's inner workings has reminded me just how far ahead of its time it was back in the day, and why it's still an inspiration for so many people even now.
This is the Commodore 16 computer in a learner pack, plugged straight into your TV. It's probably the easiest computer for a beginner. The pack has a cassette recorder, a keyboard tutor program, how to program, learn to type program, and best, it's under $300. You can get this Commodore 16 learner pack from your retailer, and I strongly suggest you do, cause I'd rather turn on my Commodore than the television.
1983 was a wild year at Commodore. A young engineer named Bill Hurd was hired as a technician only a few weeks later to find himself in charge of a major project, the TED series. Talk about being thrown into the deep end. TED, short for text display, was Commodore's attempt to make a budget-friendly computer to take on Sinclair's $100 machines. The idea was simple: make a chip, the TED chip, that could take on most of the functions needed in a computer. Fewer chips meant a cheaper machine. The TED series was supposed to include the Commodore 116, the 264, and the 364. But things got weird after Trammell's departure from Commodore in 1984. In the end, management decided to keep only 2 machines. The 116 was rebranded as the Commodore 16, and the 264 was rebadged as the Commodore Plus 4. The big mistake? They took a machine that was literally built to a $79 price point and tried to charge $300 for it. To justify the premium on the Plus 4, they bundled in some productivity software. But let's just say the quality of the software did not make it a selling point. Needless to say, people were not lining up to pay a premium price for a budget machine, and in the end, they ended up getting cleared out at a bargain basement price anyway.
Retail stores like Sears originally offered the Plus 4 for $299.95. Now on this special TV offer, you can order the Commodore Plus 4 for only $99.95 complete. Plus, you'll receive $150 in discount coupons to use when you're ready to expand your system.
If you want to hear a bunch of juicy details about Ted's development, along with the Commodore 128, which was also designed by Bill Hurd, then I recommend you read Back Into the Storm by the man himself. It's a great read for anybody who loves digging into the behind-the-scenes stories of vintage computers. We've got 3 each of the Commodore 16s and the Plus 4s to bring back to life. Some of them look really great and even are in boxes and labeled as good condition. Others not looking so great, and they were in a box labeled for parts. So it's going to be a mixed bag. The TED series may not have been a most excellent adventure for Commodore, but it's earned its spot in the time capsule of Commodore's history.
Excellent!
You better be good. You better look straight. 'Cause you really want that 128. Commodore do 128.
After the twists and turns of the TED project, Bill Hurd embarked on a most excellent post-TED adventure with the design of the Commodore 128. Released in 1985, the C128 was Commodore's ultimate attempt to outdo themselves, taking everything that was great about the Commodore 64 and layering on multiple layers of additional functionality. With its 3 distinct modes, 64 compatibility, CP/M, and the powerful native 128K mode, the C128 was like having 3 computers in one. It offered unparalleled versatility for its time, but there was a catch. While the excellent Commodore 64 compatibility was a great selling point for buyers like myself, it also stunted the development for the Commodore 128's native mode. Unfortunately, publishers and developers stuck with a much larger Commodore 64 market, leaving the Commodore 128's native capabilities largely untapped. Despite this, the Commodore 128 cemented its place as the ultimate 8-bit machine, capping off Commodore's legendary 8-bit era. Now, let's dig into our lineup of Commodore 128s. We've got 14 flat Commodore 128s in the lineup, each with its own problems and story. Among them is this Sears refurbished unit, which features a rare super chip upgrade. We'll restore it at some point and see how it stacks up against the others. And of course, there's this guy we looked at earlier, our ant-infested Commodore 128. This one's going to need a lot of love, but it's a perfect candidate for a Restoration Extreme episode. With 14 Commodore 128s to tackle, you can expect it to be featured in multiple future episodes. We'll explore its rich history, its quirks, and its contribution to computing history.
In New York today, Commodore International unveiled a new personal computer it hopes will give a boost to that troubled business. Pop artist Andy Warhol was on hand to show off the machine's graphics generating capabilities, which the company calls a major sales feature, and the computer even talks.
Now it's the time for all good men to buy Amigas.
The new Amiga is designed to compete with Apple's Macintosh, and with a $1,300 price tag, costs less money.
That moment in 1985 marked the dawn of something truly extraordinary. The Amiga wasn't just another computer, it was a window into the future. From the launch event, featuring none other than Andy Warhol, to the tech that followed, the Commodore Amiga promised to do it all. Featuring stunning graphics, professional audio, and video features that were light years ahead of anything else. The Amiga 1000 was a groundbreaking machine when it hit the scene in 1985. Featuring custom graphics and audio chips that were unheard of at the time, it was truly a marvel to behold. I remember I used to just drool at the pictures in the magazine using ham mode. I didn't realize at the time that you couldn't use 4096 colors all the time, but it didn't matter. To me, the Amiga felt like it was brought back in time from the future, but it was way outside of my price range. We've got two Amiga 1000s here. One comes with many accessories, including a Genlock and a sidecar for video production, while the other is another extreme restoration candidate, unfortunately also infested with ants. Can you guess which one I want to keep? The Amiga 500 is where Commodore hit the sweet spot between capability and accessibility. While the big box Amigas were multimedia powerhouses, the Amiga 500 became a legend in its own right. Released in 1987, it offered solid performance at an affordable price, making it the perfect machine for gaming, productivity, and everything in between. Also, did I mention it's good for gaming? I got my Amiga 500 when I was in the Army in Europe, had to have it shipped from the US in order to get an NTSC machine, and then shortly thereafter, I got out of the Army and went to college, where it got me through so many papers and circuit designs and all that work. But it also had another duty, and that was gaming. Unfortunately, I don't have that Amiga anymore. In fact, I don't even have a picture of it to show you. I've looked everywhere, nothing. But I do have the next best thing. This Amiga 500 came from one of my best friends and is the only machine I own that I also worked on back in the day. Now that machine is not included in the 64 Commodore lineup simply because there's nothing wrong with it. But who knows, maybe it'll show up in a future episode. I do, however, have two other Amiga 500s to cover in 64 Commodore, and they're both in the Restore and Explore category. The first one, which came from the Stone collection, is in a completely unknown state. We're going to have to dive in and see what's what. The second is a friend's Amiga 500 that has a curious memory issue. It'll take some work to diagnose and fix, but we'll get there sometime in the first season. So these two will be part of future episodes where we'll continue to restore and explore what made the Amiga 500 such a beloved machine. These two Amiga 2000s came from a local television station and were used in the 1990s for video production with the legendary Video Toaster. Both are missing their mice and keyboards, and one has been home to a family of mice, but not the kind I need. This will definitely be a candidate for a Restoration Extreme! Beyond that, they may have some damage from leaking batteries. It's hard to tell, but there's another cool angle here. These machines could hold some hidden treasures, like drivers for these rare Magna video switcher boards that were installed in them. Hardware that's not easy to find these days, and the drivers aren't available online. It's like a little piece of retro computing archaeology. Next, we've got this Amiga 4000, a true powerhouse in its day, and another key player in video production history. This machine was also used by the same local TV station back in the day to create news and weather effects with the Video Toaster 4000. It was restored in a previous video, but as with many vintage computers, it's developed new issues, and I have some upgrades to install. On top of that, the Video Toaster has not been tested beyond just a basic power-up, but I do plan to have a toaster-specific episode in a future season. The Amiga 4000 took everything great about the earlier Amigas and ramped it up with more processing power, better graphics, and some changes in the expandability. Like the Amiga 2000 that it replaced, this one also saw use in the same TV station where it was a workhorse for creating news and weather effects with the Video Toaster 4000. Now, let's talk about the Amiga 3000. This one, it's a bit personal. It also belonged to one of my best friends, the same one the Amiga 500 came from. This machine has some serious battery corrosion damage, but restoring it is going to be a way to honor those memories. It's been suggested that it will need a complete mainboard replacement, but I'm hoping that the original can be saved. We're also hoping to find some hidden gems like the original newsletter files still stored on the vintage hard drive. Who knows what treasures lie within? Knowing Rick, they're going to be hilarious. The Amiga line truly revolutionized what computers could do in the realm of multimedia, video production, and of course gaming. These machines are a testament to that. From the pioneering Amiga 1000 to the Amiga 4000 powerhouse, these machines had a role in changing the landscape of computing. And this is just the beginning of our journey on 64 Commodore. In an upcoming episode this season, we'll explore the evolution of the Commodore 64 from its introduction in 1982 till its bittersweet farewell in 1994. We'll also tackle the extreme restoration of that ant-infested Commodore 128. Wish me luck on that one. I don't think you're going to want to miss it. Plus, we'll explore the vibrant history of the VIC-20, an unsung hero of Commodore's legacy. And that's just a few of the episodes I have planned for the first season. From rare and interesting hardware to the stories and challenges that each brings, there's so much more to uncover about these incredible machines. I want to hear your stories, so tell them in the comments. Whether it's a blast from your own vintage past, stories about your own collections, or just a suggestion for future episodes, I would love to hear them. Don't forget to check out this playlist of episodes once they start to drop, and in the meantime, check out this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on 64 Commodore.